Hey all, welcome to part 2 of the most important curve in architecture. If you made it through part 1, congratulations. It was getting kind of long, so we decided to cut it into 2 pieces. Part 2 is quite a bit smaller, shorter. You can watch part 2 out of sequence with part 1, but it won't make quite as much sense. Part 1 lays the foundations of how we develop actual versus projected labor for projects. And what part 2 does is it actually puts it over an office concept and talks about stacking projects and labor and how to kind of manipulate curves. So absolutely can watch them out of sequence, but it might make more sense if you watch them in sequence, one after the other. Do with that as you will. All right, as always, like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. The next thing we want to talk about is kind of a culmination of all this. And this is not harder to understand, but it just takes a few more variables. So let's just go back and write this here. Again, we'll say phi projected versus actual. I think I'm abbreviating this a little different each time. So we've talked about project X. Everybody needs a project X. You feel very cloak and dagger. Project X was $100,000. And you're like, okay, that's good. And remember, that's just the architecture piece of the fee, not the team fee. But let's say you have a project Y and Z and L, M, N, O, P, and a whole bunch of projects, okay? First of all, congratulations. Seems like you have a successful firm. But secondly, you have to do the same thing with one project, but you have to do them with all the projects. So all the projects stack on top of each other cumulatively. So let's take a look at that, what that means. And this is how you can see the cumulative effect of the most important curve in architecture, projection versus actual for labor. I actually called it fee projection versus actual. They kind of somewhat interchangeable. Up here, I called it labor projected versus actual. All right, so let's go back to our lovely graph. I'm just going to generalize it. I'm just going to say this is time in months. This is fee in thousands because that's the easiest. And we know we have, let's just say we start a project and it's like this. And it goes here and it gets built and then we're done. This is essentially a, let's just call this a microcosm of kind of what we talked about up top, okay? So that's the microcosm we've talked about up top. If you take that and apply that to other projects, you could say, well, I'm going to get my next project right when the first one stops, and maybe it'll be a little bigger, so the bigger hump, and then maybe it'll be a little longer, and it goes out to there, and okay, that's nice. And then you could say, well, I'm going to get lucky enough, and I'm going to have another project. Oh, it's a bigger project, and oh, it lasts even longer. And the next thing you know, you have a whole year of 3 projects. And literally, people talk about sort of the roller coaster. COASTER, the roller coaster. And you can see this is a 1000% roller coaster of how your finances, your labor, your projections, your expenses, how that would work. That would be kind of a nightmare. Because remember, also going back to our previous example, you have staff. And let's say you have one staff that can do this much work. Well, at this point, they've got nothing to do, not very happy. At this point, they are busy beyond belief, which is kind of happy, but then maybe not happy. So managing those ups and downs, very, very, very difficult. If you were just to do one project after another, you'd burn out your people. You burn out your person in this part. They're working 60, 70-hour weeks. But then other times you're kind of sitting there not doing anything, and you say, oh, let's just work on overhead for a while. That doesn't keep the lights on. Can't just burn overhead because you want to. All right, So let's go back to this now. The way generally it works is you layer the labor for projects on top of projects. That's what makes a successful office. I'm going to show this a couple different ways, but ultimately there's software that can do it. Again, I'm a fan of Excel or some version of a Google Sheets or something or other, but there are ways that you can look at things. So let's just start this again. Project 1 and does that. Project 2 starts at the same time. So the labor for project 2 does this, but it lasts a little bit longer, but it's not as much construction. So it lasts a little bit longer, but not as much construction. So it's right on there, and then it goes down there and kind of does that. Okay. What this says is, and there's just a couple nuances here, it says that in this particular part, you've got 2 projects in construction at one time. It says you have 2 projects in design at one time, but then right here at the end, the red project stopped and the green project kept going until somewhere, right? Well, extrapolate that to more complex scenarios. Let's say somewhere in the middle, you have another project that starts and it does its thing, and it goes and it goes and it goes, and it also goes construction. Now you have 3 projects going at one time. 1, 2, 3. Well, 4 dots, but 3 projects. And now you're going to add now another one came that you didn't even know about, and it's a big one. Boom, it goes high, and boom, it lasts a long time. It goes a long time. And what happens is you have to manage the labor of all these at one time. And what I'm trying to show you here is if you just had, in this case, if you just had this green project and not the red project, this top of this curve would be down by the difference between the two. So let's talk about our labor for our staff person, Joe, or otherwise. Let's say this is one staff person. Now you have enough work the entire year for Joe, say maybe in December or whatever this is, late year, and now Joe's busy. But you have a lot more delta for Joe. Now you have to bring in Sally, and Sally's here. Now you have to bring in Ruth, and Ruth is over here. So you have a lot of work for Sally, but at the end of the year, Sally's got some delta where she has nothing to do, and maybe a little bit right here. And once you get to Ruth, she's good for the peaks of the project, and even in this big meaty green project, but then she runs out of stuff to do. So when you talk about the most important curve, it's not only managing the fees. This is a lovely graph, but it's not only managing the fees per project by staff and by their rate and all that kind of good stuff. It's then working all of the projects simultaneously in an office. So you can imagine, and let's just put a cap on this, you can imagine if you had 30 to 40 projects in an office, or 300 to 400 projects in a company with multiple offices, or any number of permutations, that you have to have some pretty sophisticated people to be able to manage your efforts and your finances and your offices, and that's a lot of work. So that's why this is the most important curve in architecture. And again, I stress the fact that yes, this is a derivation of revenue and expense, but labor is your biggest expense. It always will be. Your people are your most important asset. You spend the most on them. You train them. They're the ones that earn your fee. There's another video we'll do. It's called Earn versus Burn, different things. But ultimately, that's why this is the most important curve in architecture. I love talking about buildings and really cool buildings, but none of that works if you can't keep the lights on and keep your employees put together. So thank you for another edition of ArcLighter. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for looking at the graphs and charts. Please like, comment, describe down below. Happy to answer any questions about what you've seen. I don't think I made any mistakes, but if I did, point them out. We'll go through them again. And I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. This is a great series that we're putting together, and so look for the other videos, like I said, on schematic design, design development, the other videos about project management, other videos about cartooning a set. These are all super important. They actually help with this curve. This is a great resource, and we're happy to put this together. Thank you very much. Check out the next video. Take it easy.